Hey, I'm Jeff Halland, and this is the third video in my How to Human series. And I'm calling this one Love Yourself First, Help Yourself First, and then Love and Help Other People. And it's really kind of an idea that I've worked on for a long time, trying to understand kind of the correct order for how to improve yourself, and the when you want to help other people and help out in various ways. How can you do that? And you can help at any time. This isn't a suggestion not to volunteer or to stop volunteering or something like that. It's more of like an order of precedence. Which one is the important one for being able to do the best things for yourself and for other people? And so the idea is that first you have to take care of yourself, and you have to think about what it is that you need to be whole and complete. And I think one of the most important parts about this is that you need to learn how to love yourself and feel good about yourself and enjoy who you are and who you're becoming, because we're all changing as we get older, and we get older every second. So who are we becoming? What are we trying to do in our lives, and are we making good progress on that? And so if you don't love yourself, you have to ask yourself why. Why is it that you wouldn't love yourself? And if you don't love yourself, how connected are you to the people around you who love you? Or when you're looking for love, how available are you to be loved, because you don't love yourself? And that's not because you're not a lovable person, or you're not a good person, or you're not interesting or worthwhile in some way, but it has to do with the fact that you're not acknowledging the things about yourself that you like, and that you love yourself regardless, even if you are in a state of your life where you're doing all kinds of stuff that you don't like. You still can love yourself, and that can be the thing that lifts you out of whatever problems you're in. And I think that this is not something that I've heard voiced and kind of expressed in this way, and I've thought about it for a long time. And so now I'm kind of passing on my thinking on this, and it's what I had to go through, where you just I recognize that I love myself, and that I can say that, and I can like look myself in the eye and say I love you, me, and I'm great, and it's cool, and I'm cool with that, and it's fine. And that is a difficult thing to do at some points in your life. It certainly was for me. Now it's not, and that's pretty cool. It's still awkward to do, like now on camera, talking to other people, where eventually people will be watching this, and now I'm saying kind of awkward stuff. But it's important, I think, to be able to love yourself, and to be able to look yourself in the eye, like in a mirror, and tell yourself, I love you, and I accept you, me. I'm okay. Like that kind of silly thing that was a skit. I'm okay, and I love me, and whatever. Like kind of positive things, and of course that came from self-help books and things like that. And I've heard those things, and my reaction is to avoid them, because they seem like they're pandering, and it's not deeply thought out, and it's kind of like just hang in there, kid kind of advice. And I didn't like that. But from my own life, I've had to build up how to be a person, how to be a human, how to be, this is, I guess, where this kind of title of this talk comes from, How to Human. It's like, how do you do the things that we are? We are a thing, we are a being, we are human, and we have to do the human thing and be a human. And that is difficult, obviously, because all of us struggle. No one comes into life and just breezes through everything. Even people that seem to have it very easy struggle quite a lot. They just seem to struggle less than the viewer. The viewer who views them sees them having an easy life and thinks, wow, it's so easy for them. And yet that other person still struggles quite a bit. No one has it easy. I've never heard of a single person ever who just breezed through life. Everybody struggles. Everybody has problems. And because of that, we all have to recognize that for ourselves, we're going to be in different phases of our lives at different times. But the one thing that we can count on, if we can't count on anything else, is that we can love ourselves. Even if no one else does, you can love yourself. And so that is a very powerful thing that you can get by in times of great conflict in your life, when you're really struggling with things, by being able to support yourself and think that you love yourself and that it's okay and that you're an okay person and that there's nothing wrong with you. And even the things that you do that you may not like and the situations you're in that you may not like, that you have problems with, even if it's your fault that you got into those situations, that doesn't mean that you can't love yourself and that you're not okay and that you can't get out of it, because you can. Everybody can get out of their mess. They need to sometimes physically remove themselves from the situation. They need to stop doing things that they're doing. They need to start doing things that they want to do, whatever the situation is. But that doesn't invalidate anything about them. And, I'm kind of conflicted on whether to keep bringing up God in all of these talks, but because I talked about it the last few times, I'll just kind of keep it going where it comes to mind, because now it comes to mind. And so, when I think about this as, God made me, or I'm just here out of spontaneity, either one, from like an atheistic viewpoint of purely science, I'm just here out of all of the evolution that's gone on through cellular structures, and the pre-evolution to get to amino acids to create a DNA chain. That in itself is amazing that we have come that far. And so whether it's because God made you and God loves you and God created all this stuff, or it's because the amazing process from the generation of electrons and particles and up to cells, making quite a jump, and amino acids that make up those cells. I guess that's not true. So the DNA that would be stored in the cells, and all the functions that are part of the cells, the actin and the myosin that make the structure of the cell, and all of this really cool stuff from an atheistic point of view is also amazing. And so you are the product of that, whether through God or directly, or whether through science and the scientific method that we've discovered and the narratives that we believe about science directly. You are a part of that, and that's amazing. And you have all of the capabilities of everyone who's ever come before you in you, physically. The survival instincts and the survival abilities of everyone who ever came before you, who has survived everything that life has ever put at them. That's the amazing thing that we're a part of. And that is absolutely amazing. And no matter how you look at it, it's amazing. And all of us have that in us. And so that inner strength in the kind of Taoist Chinese kind of arts, it's called pre-heaven strength. They have this pre-heaven, post-heaven thing. And so pre-heaven is what you're given in nature, what nature gives you, what your parents give you, how you started out. This stuff was all determined before you got here. And the environment, in fact, that you're born into was also determined before you got here. And this is pre-heaven. And post-heaven is what you do with it afterwards, the development that you have in your life, the learning that you have, the impact that you make on the world. All of that is post-heaven for you when you were born. That is the kind of transition in that Taoistic kind of terminology. And that's pretty neat stuff too. And so knowing all of this stuff, you have quite a lot of reason to love yourself. You have quite a lot of reason to like yourself, and you can find all the things in you that you do have and nurture that. And if it's difficult now, you can work towards doing it better in the future. And the places that you feel you have faults now and that you want to fix, you can continue to do those things. And it doesn't preclude you fixing and doing better things that you want to love and like yourself now. And so I think that's a starting place that people need to have to be healthy, good humans. And it's one that I have now through realizing this and putting it into practice for a while. And now I have these additional terminologies with God and things around that make me feel even more. They give me one more fallback into how awesome things are, because I already have the scientific fallback that I just talked about of this amazing evolutionary chain and universe construction chain. Because as I said before, it's I was completely content and happy as an atheist as well. I just find this God model to be even better and cooler and more interesting and making life even better. And so love yourself first, help yourself first, then love and help other people. So help yourself first. There's a lot of things in our society that have to do with like martyrdom, and this no doubt comes down to Christianity, which is a major religion, which has a martyrdom aspect to it. But martyrdom, you can only martyr yourself once, and I guess other religions have this too. But so you can only martyr yourself once. The only good you will do is one time for martyring yourself, dying for a cause. And if you want to help people, you can help people every single day, and you can help people quite often, and you'll do an awful lot more good than dying and only being of help once and thinking of your help. And because martyrdom also has to do with violence, usually, if you're the one involved in violence, you're not helping anybody. It's like, even if you feel like you're getting revenge doesn't help anybody. Revenge is a destructive emotion and direction, which has to do with basically trying to right some kind of imbalance by creating more imbalance. And so that means there's more righting of imbalance that needs to be done. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. This kind of thing. It's like there's no reason to do this. And so of course that's obvious enough to kind of more well-balanced people in the world that aren't quite so desperate. But in kind of your everyday life, it seems a little more like you should martyr yourself in society, in my opinion, like that somehow you should sacrifice yourself for something. And I don't think that's right. I think, maybe there's a time that you should sacrifice yourself for something, like someone you care about is in some kind of jeopardy and you want to step in and stop it. It's like, sure, okay, that's a thing, but you're not necessarily martyring yourself. You're trying to help out, and you understand that there's risks involved and you're willing to take them. And so that's a situation. But martyrdom has to do with really more of like a death. So like a social death, financial death, physical death, something like that, spiritual death. It's like all kinds of ways you could martyr yourself. And that somehow this has good connotations to it. And I don't think it does. And I don't think focusing on this is a good idea. And I think the effect that's positive out of this could come about anyway, just by loving the other people and wanting to help them. You might accidentally martyr yourself, but I think that should be the only way that happens, is that you care about someone or care about something and you're trying to do it and you accidentally martyr yourself because you were just trying to help, but it happened that you didn't make it out in some way. Like I said, it could be financial or spiritual or physical or emotional. There's all kinds of ways mentally you can have a death, and that might be one that you could basically never recover from. So sometimes people have financial death when they become homeless or something, and they have emotional death when they suffer PTSD, and they have mental death when they become like a paranoid schizophrenic or something, or they have spiritual death in that something happens to them that breaks their confidence in society or human nature or other people or someone that they loved, and like a romantic death. And so each of these things is possible, and sometimes they're encouraged. And so going in this help yourself first, love yourself, if you love yourself, you wouldn't ever think of martyring yourself, because you love yourself, and you love yourself alone, and you love yourself with other people. And so martyring yourself is not a thing to do if you love yourself. And if you're trying to help yourself, that's also not a thing to do. It's not helpful. So any kind of like overly self-sacrifice, and that doesn't mean that there isn't sacrifice in life, like you trade one thing for another thing, but often when people talk about sacrificing, it's really just making a trade-off. And a trade-off is not quite the same thing as injuring yourself or hurting yourself or destroying yourself in some way, being destructive. And so trade-offs are more like I could do something that costs $20, or I could do something that costs $10, and so there's a trade-off, and I would get a different thing for the $20 and the $10 or something, and so then I have to decide whether that thing is worth it. And so that is not martyrdom. That's not sacrificing. That's just a trade-off. It's like, so there's a big difference here, and I think conflation is part of the problem. If you don't think to be very clear in your words and think to have things very separated out from each other so that you can try to understand whether one thing is this way or that way or some other way, then throughout the spectrum and all the possible connections that things are in, then it's easy to conflate words like sacrifice and trade-off together and just kind of lump them together, and people will use them together. But you should think about what you're doing when it comes to your life. And so it's really important. And so having these two different words of sacrifice and trade-off not be the same thing and be very different. Like sacrifice is when you're injuring yourself, you're losing something key to yourself. It's destructive. Trade-off is just kind of an economic or preference kind of thing. It's not such a big deal. It's not on the martyrdom spectrum. It's like if you order a $10 thing because it's cheaper and it's just not quite as good, you are not killing yourself over that. That is not a martyrdom thing. That kind of exaggeration is not helpful. And so love yourself, help yourself first, and then love and help other people kind of allows you to be healthy and have your stuff together. And then when you have your stuff together and you're healthy, you have more to give other people, and you have a replenishing supply because you are in a good place in all your manners. Anything that you have is in excess, you can just give away. And then it's not like you have, to use a monetary reference, you have $100 and you have no new income coming in. And so someone needs $10 and you give it to them, and someone needs $10 and you give it to them, and someone needs $10 and you give it to them, and 10 people later you have nothing else to give. You can't pay your own rent, buy your own food, you can't help anyone else. That's it. Versus you have a job and you make $200 a week. And this is obviously just examples to be simple. This is not it would be ridiculous to extrapolate out of this, but it's like you have $200 a week that's coming in for a job, and your expenses are $100 a week, and so each week you give out 10 things to people, or maybe you only give out 7 things to people just in case there's a problem, or maybe you only give out 1 thing to people. So one $10 allotment, and the rest of it you use for a rainy day and other projects. And so you pay your bill, and you do your other things, and you give out that one thing. That's sustainable. Every week you could help out one person, and you could help out 52 people a year. And like over your lifetime, that's quite a few people of helping out. And using money is silly because that's not the best way to help people. Sometimes that is something that people need help with, but the best way to help people is to support them and to teach them things, and to listen to them when they need it, and to help guide them into directions where they're good. And that kind of advice and that kind of ability to support other people is best when you are yourself healthy, and that you have time that you can devote to them because you've got your stuff together, and giving them that time doesn't take away from you in a way that's unsustainable, and doesn't mess you up in a way where you could end up resenting spending that time with that person or those resources that you applied to that person because you had it to give, and you won't resent it because you're not suffering afterwards. So another thing that I thought of is kind of an addendum to the lots of people have said this, but often it's attributed to Socrates, like know thyself. And so you could kind of just add to this, know thyself, love thyself, and that they should be together. You could say know thyself, love thyself, know thyself. And in both directions, you are knowing yourself and loving what you know. Even the things that you don't like, you can still love as being part of the process, part of your story if you turn it into a narrative of your life. And you're trying to get someplace, and this is where you are now, and this is, the dramatic backstory to the even better you if you're working to do that. And you can love that. And even if you're in a slump right now and you're not moving forward, you're moving down or backwards, it's like... although never really backwards, it's just, you're kind of regressing maybe. It's like, then you can still know yourself and offer yourself the love and accept yourself, and you will be better for it. It's like, you can't love yourself and like be honest with yourself. And of course you can't know yourself or love yourself if you're not being honest with yourself. If you're lying to yourself about any of the attributes about you, and even if you're just unclear on them, or you are kind of blurry with them, or you don't think about them very often, they don't come up very often, then you can't really know yourself and you can't really love yourself, because what you could apply love to wouldn't really be you. And I don't think you can fake yourself out like that. I think you pretty much know that's not right. It's not going to work out. So know thyself, love thyself, know thyself. I think this is another key thing. So I had a couple other notes of things that I wanted to get into here. One of the things is avoid self-inflicting any kind of pain and damage on yourself. It's not that's not helpful. It's like, and there are lots of kind of pain and damages that we inflict on ourselves all the time, and we think of them as coming from outside sources, but of course they're actually appearing from inside our body. And so being angry, being jealous, let's see, do I have any other ones here? And basically anger and jealousy are good places to start, but greedy, you could think about any of the sin-ish kind of stuff, and when you apply it to other people, and it is really you hurting yourself, and you're messing with them too, and you're messing with other people. Other people will see you do this, and that will mess with them too. But you don't have to do it, and you have to realize that all that comes inside of you. And for me, this I started working on this when I was driving. I'd be driving in freeway traffic in like rush hour, and people would cut me off, and I'd get angry and territorial about it. And then I had to realize this is just hurting myself. Like, the anger that I'm feeling is coming from inside me. I see an external stimulus of someone entering my territory. I feel territorial about it. Like, man, you cut me off, and now I'm upset, and like maybe I'm honking the horn or making hand signals or something, saying things, talking to myself in the car because I'm upset about them. And I realized this is all crazy behavior, and it can be stopped. And so this is I'll give some other talks at some point on kind of some of the techniques that I've developed for this that I call auto neural programming, where you basically are able to control your own nervous system to make improvements. But the basic technique of this was there's going to be an event, which is the car pulling in front of me, and that will release a stimulus inside me. And my kind of medical jargon for this, which may or may not be totally accurate, is that there's an anger and or a fear cycle and an anger cycle. And the first one is fear, and I believe that is the adrenaline hormone, and the second one is anger, and I believe that is the noradrenaline hormone. And I believe there is a shift that happens where it first releases adrenaline for you to shock and freeze up and want to know what's going on, and then it releases the noradrenaline, and you're angry, you're ready to do battle and take this person down who's in your territory. And so I believe that is the cocktail of hormones that is released in the order that they're released in. And that's how I feel it, and that's the model that I've worked on. So even if that's not medically accurate, which if anybody knows, let me know. I'd be happy to update my information. If it's not medically accurate, it is a good model for how things happen to me when someone pulls in front of me in traffic. It's like I have the territory sense, and then the kind of fear of like, you're in my space, and I'm agitated by it. And then the anger of, what are you doing in my space? Get out of my space. So confronting this and working on this kind of thing of there's an event with has stimulus, which I respond to, and cutting it off and saying, no, I don't want this. It's like I'm going to block this impulse that I'm going to have to be afraid and be angry. And I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to be afraid and I'm angry. And I came up with a kind of mental simulation, which is that on the freeway, we're in like a pipe with has water in it, and sometimes there's obstacles in the water, and like some of the water may move in front of you and then you move slower, but we're all going to get there pretty much at the same time, and there's not really anything you can do about there being an obstacle and it changing the flow of the water in the pipe. And so that allowed me to visualize, and that could be done in any way. It didn't have to be that thing. That just is one of the things that came to me, and that allowed me to visualize that it's like practically it doesn't matter, that we're all on this road, and like sure some lanes are faster and stuff, but in the short term of someone just cutting in front of me, it's not a big deal. No harm, no foul, no blood, no foul, everything's fine. And so there's no reason to get mad about that. And so that anger is just me hurting myself, and letting that go was huge. It was really huge, because that was a huge part of my day, getting angry at people and like being all up and crazy. In the Chinese medicine, it would be like the liver is inflamed and things. And so, all these different ways of thinking about stuff. And so, but that's just me hurting myself, and there's no reason to do it. And jealousy is the same thing. If you're jealous about someone else, like you're jealous and worried that your significant other is not as into you or is into someone else, or people just look at them, it's like that is you hurting yourself, and it's gonna cause a problem in the relationship. Sometimes people even want that jealousy or are upset when the jealousy isn't there, but it's still an unhealthy thing, and so it's gonna cause a problem in the relationship because it's unhealthy. Only healthy things support anything. It has to be healthy, or by definition, it's unhealthy, and therefore it will fall into disrepair. And that's really what this is all about. Love yourself first, help yourself first, and then love and help other people is about being healthy. It's like if you don't love yourself, there's an unhealthy aspect to that. If you don't help yourself, there's an unhealthy aspect to that. If you give more than you have to give, there's an unhealthy aspect to that. And if you don't give anything, love, concern, care, time to other people, there's an unhealthy aspect to that. So not hurting yourself is a big part of this. And I had another piece here, which was once you're healthy, your viewpoint will change because you're more balanced and you can get better perspective on things. And so that's what I'll wrap this up with, which is that if you are taking care of yourself and you're healthy, you will have a better way to look at how the world works and how other people are and what's going on, because you are healthy and you have a better vision. You can see more stuff. It's more clear to you. And so you'll have a better perspective and you'll be more balanced and more healthy. And so when you try to help other people, that will come across better, and it won't be so needy or pushy or unbalanced because you're not unhealthy yourself. And so you're able to help other people better. And so I think helping other people is normal. It's like you like and love other people, help them in whatever way you can, whether that's just listening to them or, sometimes giving advice or, although, advice is hard to give, it's hard to take, or it may be easy to give, but hard to take, or, supporting them in some other way or teaching them something, or doing things with them, supporting them, loving them, liking them, complimenting them when appropriate, criticizing them less frequently, but when appropriate. It's like these are all good things to do for other people. So I think it's normal, and we should just balance it. And I think it's concentric circles out. You start with you start with the people next closest around you, and so on outward until you get to kind of society and everybody. And obviously your society comes first and other people's societies come next, and that's good and the right way because it comes from the inside out. Me to my immediate friends and family, to my next level of friends, to acquaintances, to peers and other people, and then the same thing, me here in my hometown, to me in my region, to here in my state, to here in my country, to here in the world, to here in the universe. It's like they're all connected, but you should care about the people that are around you more because you know more about them and you can affect them more rather than caring about people in some other place and not in your place, because you don't really know what's going on in their place because you're not there and you're not part of them, and they need to care about themselves and you can care about them too, but it should be once you've taken care of your own people. And I think this is a way to be much healthier. It's like sometimes we're too concerned about people someplace else and we're going to go and fix them or help them in some way, but we can't take care of ourselves here. So in the macro level as well as in the micro level, I think all of this applies. And so it's kind of an interesting twist. I hadn't planned on bringing up the macro level on this, but I think it works out. And I'll just leave that as something you can think about on your own, and I'll think about it on my own too. So that's it for this one, the third episode of How to Human. And the next one, I'm not sure, but it might be people you don't know. So talking about the relationships we all have with people that we don't actually know, and how they're sometimes, in a lot of ways, closer relationships than people we do know. And these would be mythological figures, historical figures, celebrities, and other people that we don't know. So that's probably going to be the next talk, and maybe it'll be tomorrow. I'm enjoying doing these, and I want to try to keep it up and do it as much as possible because I'm enjoying it and it's fun. So see ya. Thanks.